Hello and welcome back for a new season of Face Off here on France 24. This Friday, the casting of the primary to designate the Conservative candidate for next year's presidential election will be known. The poll, which is scheduled for November, marks the first time the right will use the primary mechanism, and the knives are already out. To talk about this unprecedented primary, Stefan de Vries from the Dutch TV station RTL 4 and Philip Troll from Radio France Internationale. So most of the favorites are already known. We'll have the final list this Friday, but clearly there are two rivals to win this primary. The former president, Nicolas Sarkozy, and the former prime minister, Alain Juppé. They're well ahead of a former minister, Bruno Le Maire, and a former prime minister, another former prime minister, François Fillon. And of course, they were all promising to be nice with one another.
Et réussir, ça veut dire quoi?
And what does success mean for this primary? It means doing everything we can to make it an opportunity for debate and not fighting. This is the message I have for you today. I want a real debate, not a fight.
Dans cette campagne, je veux vous le dire.
For this campaign, I want to tell you, my dear friends, that I made a choice and I stand by it. I will not answer any attacks. I will not add fuel to a fire that doesn't need to be lit.
Stefan de Vries, nice words.
Yeah, nice words, but in practice it's completely different. There have been already a lot of fights between the several candidates, and I assume they will get worse in the running up until the primaries, which will take place in November. So that leaves us at least 2 months for some mudslinging, and most of the candidates, I think, they will not refrain from insulting the others. So we will see a very interesting circus the next couple of weeks.
A circus, Philip Troll, just to have a general view. According to the polls, Alain Juppé, who was a prime minister back in the 1990s, and is kind of the older statesman, if you want, in the race, is well ahead in the polls. However, Nicolas Sarkozy has been gaining ground. It seems the winner will be one of them.
Well, if you go back to 2012, when Nicolas Sarkozy lost the presidential election, a lot of French people said at the time, now that Sarkozy has lost, we don't want him back. That's it. And he remains, for a majority of the French people, the candidate they don't want to see return to office, not only on the right, but above all on the left. So he's got that fight already on his hands to try to win back global support within France to make it possible for him to be president. That's one problem. The second problem is within his own party, there are those who say that Sarkozy has had his time. We need someone new, more modern. The problem is there isn't anybody. The only candidate who is popular is Alain Juppé, whom he said was prime minister back in the 1990s, who's over 70. And it's very difficult for him to come forward and to propose himself as a new candidate because everybody in France knows who he is. So at the start of this race, Alain Juppé was the favourite. He was the man who was the opposite of Nicolas Sarkozy, this unpopular former president. But because of the terrorist attacks in France, because of the economic climate, because of all the row over the bikini swimming costume that we've seen over the summer period, Nicolas Sarkozy has now begun to claw back a little bit more support. So we've got to the point now where we're 2 months ahead of the primary election, as Stefan was saying, where we see that Nicolas Sarkozy is maybe gaining a little bit of ground and Alain Juppé is losing a little bit of ground. So it's making this competition much more open, and it doesn't mean now that Sarkozy is guaranteed to lose.
Right. One issue that has already been in this pre-campaign, but will clearly be there, is Nicolas Sarkozy's legal issues. Yeah. We've seen this just this week. A public prosecutor recommended that he be sent to trial for basically overspending in the last presidential campaign. And we're just going to listen to one of his rivals, his former prime minister, François Fillon, who before this decision already raised some doubts about the probity of the former president. Let's take a listen.
It's useless to speak of authority when one is not irreproachable. Who would imagine for a moment General de Gaulle would be put under formal investigation?
General de Gaulle, he would never run for president if he was in legal trouble. This was really a frontal, blunt attack against Nicolas Sarkozy. We're likely to see more of the same.
Yeah, a frontal attack by his former prime minister, one of the few prime ministers in the history of France who stayed with the president for the full mandate of 5 years. So you would wonder why was he loyal to Nicolas Sarkozy while he was a prime minister? François Hollande is not doing very well in the polls. He is, of course, well known, but he's also known to be not a very charismatic figure. So he tries to win points to attack Sarkozy, who's still very unpopular, even within his own party. And yes, it shows the difficulties Sarkozy may be facing, because it's the truth, of course. François Fillon is not talking nonsense by attacking him. Sarkozy has to explain his role in many legal cases, in many criminal affairs even. He has been indicted, well, almost indicted formally in 2 affairs. There may be 2 or 3 more, all this during his campaign. So it looks very bad, I think, when there is a candidate for the presidency who is involved in a lot of legal trouble. But apparently Sarkozy doesn't think that's an issue. And this week he said, well, this is just a political scheme from the left. I'm completely innocent. So, you know, it's not a problem for me.
Right.
I think it needs to be underlined that in France, these kind of judicial problems seem to always raise their head or come to the front just as a political campaign begins. It just is always a bit of a coincidence that when a politician has got problems with something that he's been caught up with by breaking the law, it always seems to come to a head just as they're trying to become a candidate for an election. So let's go back to General de Gaulle. General de Gaulle never was taken to court or put under examination for some illegal goings on. So we don't know what he would have done. That's all conjecture. In France, you are innocent until proven guilty. So even if Sarkozy does go to court, it doesn't mean he's definitely guilty of what he did. He did. But
it's just the image.
It's the image which suffers. And what we don't know is, just to sum it up very quickly for the viewers, is that Sarkozy is accused of overstepping the financing of his election campaign in 2012 via a company called Big Malion, which was responsible for organising this campaign in 2012. Sarkozy says he didn't know anything about what was going on, but the judges say, well, as he was the candidate, he should have known. So nobody knows whether Sarkozy knows or not, but this is what this new case is about. And the thing is that even if he is elected as a candidate in the primaries in November, and he goes forward to the presidential election, and even if he does become president of France next year in May, the chances of the trial taking place before the presidential election takes place are extremely slim. So it probably will be, I think, not the judges who will decide whether he goes to trial, but it'll actually be the French people who vote for him who will decide.
Right, and let's not forget that Alain Juppé was actually not only indicted, but convicted.
Absolutely, yeah.
For also some financing issues several years ago, but he can claim that he paid for it. Do you think identity politics will prevail in this campaign, which could be to the advantage of Nicolas Sarkozy? Just to sum it up, he's more towards the right, some would say the far right. Alain Juppé is more towards the center.
Yes, I'm afraid so. And I think it's a general European trend, or even American. In all the mature democracies, we're seeing this kind of rhetoric.
Even in Germany.
Even in Germany, we've seen that this week with the election in a federal state of Germany, which was a very bad result for Angela Merkel. So it fits into a trend. The mature democracies, the voters are just tired. They are afraid. And that plays into the hands of the populists and the people who have a more nationalistic discourse. And as you see, it's not only the right that's playing into that, but we also see the socialists here in the figure, for instance, with Manuel Valls, the prime minister, who's playing that card as well. So it's a general trend, and I think it will dominate the whole campaign, not only in the French elections, but also in the German elections next year, Dutch elections. There are many elections in Europe next year, and everywhere you see this being the most important topic, whereas France, of course, has many far more serious problems, the economy to start with, and the unemployment. So I'm afraid this will dominate the campaign, but it is, well, it's reality, and all the candidates will try to win votes with a rather extremist rhetoric.
And do you think Alain Juppé will also probably veer towards the right, or he will say, I will stay the course. I'm someone who's a moderate, and I will not use those identity politics just to win political points?
Well, the thing is, if he could do, and he has made some more
moderate,
pro-right wing comments during his campaign, but I think that if he starts to move more towards the right to try to win support from those who would support Nicolas Sarkozy, he's not going to make it because Sarkozy knows that if he wants to win, he's going to win it on the right of the party. So Juppé needs to move towards the left. There are two interesting points here. The first one is that for François Hollande, the outgoing president, he is much more keen that it's Sarkozy who wins this fight, because that would give him more of a chance of making it through to the second round of the presidential elections next year. And the other important aspect to know is that the far-right National Front of Marine Le Pen is almost guaranteed in France to make it through to the second round. So when we have this primary in the right in November, the person who wins that is almost guaranteed, I think, to be the next president of France. So the presidential election won't be played out next year in May, it'll be played out in November. Simply by the fact that Marine Le Pen will make it through to the second round, she won't have enough ground support in France from the majority of the French population to win the second round. It'll be the person who's against her who will win, and that may well be the person who's designated in the Republican primaries in November.
So in 20 seconds, who will be that person, Stéphane?
I personally would put my money on Alain Juppé.
I think it might well be Nicolas Sarkozy.
Okay, we'll have the verdict in a few months, and we'll go back to this program to see who was right. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Face Off. We'll see you next week here on France 24.